Well, welcome everyone to West East Poets of the Pandemic and Beyond. I'm Sandy Yannone, along with my other co-hosts today, Carolyn Wright and Lynn McGee. Our fourth co-host, Susan H. Case, as I like to say, is off on poetry assignment elsewhere in the world and sends her very best. We are an occasional yet steady reading series that joins you on Zoom every other month of the year with a constellation of featured poets followed by an open mic. The twist to distinguish our series, however, from others is that our hosts each invite and introduce a chosen poet independent of the other hosts. And these create the most dynamic juxtapositions and conversations between poets as you are about to experience. And if you're here for the first time here in our Zoom room, thank you so much for being here. And of course, if you are returning, you already know by the already know about the alchemy that this series produces, and welcome back. We will follow our featured poets today with an open mic, and we welcome those of you who are interested in signing up in the chat, and Lynn will be taking care of that. It also just seems appropriate for me that I'm doing the opening introductions and welcome today. We rotate that as well. Our reading today with Anna Leahy, Joseph Zaccardi, Sheila Black, and Jason Schneiderman. I'm a person that likes to connect, and not only with the poems I'm reading, but I like to also fabricate or fashion some human connections with the poets as well. It makes for me the exchange of reading poetry that much more expansive, and maybe in further solidarity or folly, depending on your interpretation about who the speaker is in any poem. And regardless, I marvel at the conversations that all four of these poets we are about to hear from today are having with themselves, their speakers, their personas, their readership, their audiences. I had the joy of choosing to read Anna Leahy and Jason Schneiderman's new collections for the August Seeley Challenge. And if you're not familiar with the challenge, it's a self-imposed joy of a struggle to read a poetry collection a day in the month of August. And I added the twist of writing a micro review reflection as well. Well, Sheila Black is a pressmate of mine at Salmon Poetry.
Yes.
I've not heard you read yet, but I am always eager to be in direct community with my salmon siblings, as I like to call them. And Joseph Zaccardi, who belongs to that group of poets I absolutely adore, poets who are writers and darn good poetry citizens. Joseph served as a poet laureate of Marin County from 2013 to 2015. I hope I got the dates right, and is a frequent writer of reviews. So before I introduce our first reader, just a little housekeeping. Please keep your microphones muted unless you are the speaker in this reading. And please feel free to use the chat generously and respectfully to show your appreciation for the poets reading today, including our open mic poets who will follow today's featured readers, as I mentioned. We also will have bios and links to purchase books from the featured readers in our chat, so please do support the poets, their books, and their presses in whatever way is possible for you. And now to our first poet for today. Anna Leahy was actually my first read this summer in what was my first ever Seeley Challenge. And all I can say is that reading her book, If in Some Cataclysm, was the perfect book to propel me forward into the unknown. If in Some Cataclysm from Glasslyre Press is a book of such complexity, substance, consequence, and simplicity. She layers the personal and the historical like tectonic plates, anticipating their temporal groundbreaking shifts. I love when a poet creates a book that is multidimensional, prismatic, that leaves me seeking and satisfied with what I think I'm coming to know. This is how, if in some cataclysm, spellbound me and reinforced my perspective on what an exceptional poetry collection can accomplish. As you'll see in the more formal biography, Anna is accomplished in every possible way as a poet. This is her, I believe, fourth collection. She has myriad awards and publications, but what remains is what we read. And reading her poetry was a revelation. I'm truly, truly honored today to be able to listen. Please welcome Anna Leahy.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That was an amazing introduction. And I'm so glad that you held the book up because I think it's got such a beautiful cover, which I also want to say is the case for your book. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous cover. And of course, the poems are quite amazing too. And I love what you're doing with turning the ideas of glass over and over and over in the poems. Thanks to all the organizers. Lynn did a great job making sure that we had logistics, and that was good because I even emailed her this morning to confirm. And of course, Sandy, thank you so much for reaching out, and of course the other organizers as well. I also like the idea of describing the featured readers as a constellation. I think I want to be a constellation of poets all the time. I think I'll begin with the first poem, and then I'll just say a few words about the collection and how it's held together and the various things I'm trying to do in the collection. The first poem is called On the Brink. This year, the universe says, "You are old." Panic is a wrinkle that goes only so far. Through the day, around the corner, the bend. Promises don't keep the story in orbit. Order creates us, and then there's chaos. Atypical hyperplasias in the heavens, hemorrhages in the hollows of the galaxy, little extinctions everywhere. In the body of the world, in the world of the body, living becomes window weather. Lips press the pain, this clear incision in the world, in the worry. We are glaciers, we swallow glass. Life's shards in the throat, in the heart. How does one get used to this urgent in between what's been and what's to be? And Sandy, if you were reading along, you'll see that that's the only page there's a typo, and how it ended up in the first poem. My copy editing self is so sad about that. But I think that poem opens up the larger concept of the book, and that is that the book explores the idea of middles. Each poem is a different way to think about middles. And this idea came to me when I was with a small group of artists, a composer and writers at Ragdale in February of 2020. And so it was the last inspiration I had before the pandemic hit. And I was trying to put together a collection of poems, and I didn't know how to pull poems I had written over a long span of time together into something that could be called a book. And at dinner one evening, I said, I think I'm just going to write about middles, and this whole book is going to be about middles. Please tell me that's too off the wall. And they all said, no, do it. So that's how this book came to be. The middles include middle body parts. I'll read one of those poems next. A sequence of sort of prose poems that are about an imagined middle-aged couple. Middles in terms of history, so mid-century, mid-decade, The mid-decades of my own life are the most personal poems in the collection. But I really had a wild time thinking about the next poem and the next poem. And so even though I had started out with the batch of poems that I wanted to make into the book, many of those never made it into the book. So if you have another idea for me, I've got some leftover poems I need to pull together. This poem is called Thorax, This Arrhythmia. Once a thing is done, it cannot be taken back. It sears, it smolders, fate seals it. The gravest mistakes we make are when grief and fear lodge in the chambers of our hearts as if they are companions warming themselves by the atrial fire, and we are taken by surprise by someone else's hurt, that someone else can hang fire and our impulse to spark it. Blood rushes in through a pause and leaves full of glint and wasted time. Angina is a strangling. The heart heals by scars. It's an involuntary muscle, unthinking or unwilling or both. To live, then, is to admit having done the unforgivable, the heart only reconciled with life's quivering fibrillations until the ventricular flutter of farewell, when the body of the world leaps into the stunning undoing. The next one I'll read is called Middle Passage, Verbs Searching for Nouns. And I've never read this one because it's an erasure poem based on a Wikipedia entry, and then it's followed by a gloss that is exploring the etymology of the words that I did not erase from the Wikipedia entry. So I'll give it a go. I haven't read many of these poems with glosses, and the glosses they follow the actual poem, and they're sort of prose poems, but they start with a tag or a word that's from the original poem, and then I riff on that. In this case, I riffed by doing etymology of the words that are in the erasure poem. So this is from the first section of the Wikipedia entry on Middle Passage. And of course, because Wikipedia is crowdsourced, the text may have changed since I wrote the poem. So this is also a sort of timestamp for the way we defined Middle Passage at that moment that I pulled the text from Wikipedia. So Middle Passage, verbs searching for nouns, in which millions forcibly transported, departed, traded, purchased, kidnapped, transported, sold or traded, transported, loaded, put to work, organized, a time of in-betweenness, traded, motivated, forced, enslaved, died in the process. Deaths directly, for 200 years, transported, carried, depending on conditions. It is believed, sold, forced marched, held for sale, contained, chained, chains or hand and leg cuffs, the many tools used, locked, fastened, food was scarce, the shackles watched closely. In conditions of death, these conditions, the corpses thrown, ridden, always found, shackled, the death toll spread, the rate of death, the length, the voyage, the incidence, the quality and amount of freedom and humanity. And the gloss reads, sort of, crowd is approximately oppression, is approximately the act of shoving, source is approximately an attack, is approximately the beginning of a river. Passage is approximately the act of spreading something across place or time. Erasure is approximately the act of gnawing at, the act of scraping something out. Indescribable is approximately incapable of being written down, a hypocrisy like a word sieve. Own is approximately to presume one ought to have, not to be confused with owning up to. Slave is approximately someone stripped of allegiance, is approximately someone who runs. On the origin of verbs. To carry across, to divide from, to tread upon, to hunt down, to snatch away, to carry over, to offer a sacrifice, to tread upon, to carry over, to travel, to poke, to do, to make whole, to tread upon, to incite, to conquer by violence, to turn property, to turn into chattel, to become senseless, to carry over, to run, to hang, to have confidence, to give over, to trample, to control, to hold together, to twist, to profit by, to enclose, to make solid, to keep an eye on, to writhe, to move as if sailing, to discover by searching, to chain, to extend. On the origin of nouns. 10,000,000, a divide, an auction, acts of dying, a complete cycle, what's agreed upon, what's taken, what's twisted, what's covered, a preparation, fuel, couplings, what's agreed upon, an act of dying, what's agreed upon, bodies, attacks, an act of dying, the journey, the distance of a line, a coming into contact, a condition, a mountain, the rule of one's own will, the state of being a person. So in that one, I was definitely trying to explore how language works and how we talk about the most difficult things in our history. I think I'm a little running out of time, so I'm not going to read the poems about the imagined middle-aged couple. And instead, I think I'm just going to jump to the last poem, which I wrote as a hopeful poem. And I think it can be read in many ways, but I hope this is one of the happy poems in the book, even though this is about chaos and cataclysm. The empty set. Here, all the circles with sharp angles and all the elements of all our wicked problems arm in arm with their possaded solutions. Here, the small and sweeping, the decentralized unspinning, the affordable, the valuable, the sustainable of a fleeting forever. Here, all the numbers that are both odd and even, all the universal ideas and all the passenger pigeons in flight and all the birds traveling faster than light. Oh, these constant leavings, here where parallel lines meet and the net catches the wind as the sky falls. It's not that there's nothing here, but there's nothing inside. Somewhere, a space must be waiting to contain all our possibilities. Let's allow for this impossible paradoxical embodiment that leaves out nothing, that is already filled with even the unimaginable human hearts between the brackets of every cataclysm. Thank you.
Well, hello everybody. I am having some email issues here, or some connectivity issues. So I'm going to post Sheila's bio right away as soon as I can locate where I had it here, and then I am going to hope that my internet stays connected. So here is Sheila's bio. Okay, that went through. Yay. Excellent. And so I am absolutely thrilled. And thank you so much, Anna, for that really stunning. And I was feeling, I was in my Miss Dickinson, my Emily D mode, where I felt the top of my head coming off as you were reading, because when work really inspires me, I just, it catches at so many of those poetic threads, and it's hard to it's hard to contain oneself, so I don't. And then my internet begins to fail, but it's not connected. Anyway, it's a delight to introduce Sheila Black. Sheila and I have had various connections over the years through AWP, the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, and she was involved with. She's been involved with the conferences. What do they call it? Centers and literary conferences and centers aspect or division of AWP, and she has worked. She for 8 years directed Gemini Inc., the literary center in San Antonio, where she still lives. But now that she is the assistant director of the Virginia G. Piper Center for Creative Writing at Arizona State University in Tempe, she is having a commuter life, going back and forth between Tempe and San Antonio, which I find amazing. But this is part of Sheila's, way of being, because she's been all over the world. She was born in Scotland. Her father was in the Foreign Service. Her mother was Scottish, but they met at the Alhambra in Spain, which is, I mean, how much more, what a more glamorous, globe-trotting life could you have? But Sheila and I bonded over finding out, I think it was 2 years ago, when I was in Bahia, in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil, during the first segment of this Fulbright grant that I just returned from Brazil like 9 days ago from the second half. But Sheila and I were talking about how when she was very small, her family moved to Brazil, for her father's work. They lived first in Rio de Janeiro, Rio, as we say in English, in an apartment. And she was much affected, and this was like in the early 60s. It sounds as if it was before the dictatorship, which started there was a coup in 64, which overthrew the democratically elected leader. Doesn't this sound familiar? But she was living in Rio as a small child, and has a memory of a nun, Sister Agnes, who was a very traumatizing person. And I hope that this sort of lore ends up in some poetry that I have not yet seen. And then she was living in Sao Paulo after that for a time, where she has memories of a wonderful garden that was kind of magical, and it made me think of The Secret Garden, a book that I read as a child, and any number of other wonderful gardens. She's also been the founding director, one of the founders of an organization called Zooglosia, which advocates for the rights of and the what I want to say, just the profile, the prominence of writers who are experiencing disability. So, which is such an odd word, but we're all disabled in some ways or another. I know I am, but I was really thrilled to have this conversation with her about Brazil, and I hope we can continue it. But there's a few lines of her poetry that I just really love, that I'm going to quickly read these, and then I'm going to let Sheila go. This was let me see if I can find it here. It went away. And I'm just going to read these 2 lines here. I watched you, just watched you, regardless of the pain it caused me, or my refusal of all consolation. So long had I sought to enter the realm of pure feeling. And of course, as poets, we are all trying to enter the realm of pure feeling, regardless of the pain that it might cause us. It's an adventure. It's an inner adventure. So with all that, and with Radium Dream, Sheila Black's most recent book from Salmon Books, let us welcome Sheila Black to read for us. So thank you so much for being here.
That was quite the introduction, Carolyn. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. It's been kind of amazing to hear the poetry so far. Yes, so my most recent book is Radium Dream, and I'm going to praise the cover. It's by my friend Octavio Quintanilla, and he makes one of these a day. They're called From Textos, and I'm kind of amazed. I picked this one, but check it out. They're really wonderful. And Anna, I felt so mortified because when you were talking about the theme of your book, I was thinking, oh my gosh, how would I boil down what Radium Dream is about? I had very clear kind of ideas, but I'm always a little murky at articulating them. But as Carolyn pointed out, I have a kind of a history of working within the frame of disability poetics because I was born with a fairly rare genetic condition called X-linked hypophosphatemia, which is a failure to absorb phosphorus. And it turns into sort of nutritional rickets type symptoms. So when I was about 13, I had a major kind of surgery that kind of reconstructed my legs. I gained 3 inches in height, and I was in a body cast for 9 months, I guess. Quite a long time, 6 months probably. It felt like 9 months. I'm trying to even piece it together. It was way back. And so in some ways, Radium Dream was a little bit about sort of things that are the beauty in trauma in a way. And that sounds very morbid, but sort of the way things can be sort of, I mean, I guess I've always been interested in life and how, painful experiences can lead to big insights or things we have to live all the time with sort of painful things alongside being open to beauty. So I'm just going to read a couple of poems from that book and then a couple from a new chapbook that's coming out from Lily Poetry Review Books. I'm never sure their name. I always want to say Lily Review Books or Lily Poetry Books, but I think the title is actually Lily Poetry Review Books. And they have a wonderful editor, I have to say, who's Eileen Cleary, who's I want to sing her praises because she kind of went through the book with me and nobody has ever done that in my whole, I'm on my 5th poetry book. And this was the first, though Salmon too has been very kind and they're my big book publishers. And I love Salmon. So this poem, the first one I'm going to read is called Getting Over It. And I've never read it and I just picked it because it kind of conveys maybe the attitude of the book a little bit. Okay. Getting over it. Consider it a lesson. Here is how you make soup. It is like the stars, a broth of ghosts and bone. It is good to inhale the steam that rises from the pot, the rich mulch of long fallow, dear departed. In the mirror, a wrinkle cuts my face in two. I don't care. I don't even pine. I get out the clean cutting board and chop an onion into tiny squares. I look as if I've been frowning a long time. I knew you were the last one, the way a person might have one bird for a whole season, a dove that cries in a peculiar way, or the cardinal flashing just now outside a window. I turn up the flame and the onions brown. The broth is better if it tastes a little burned. The floating, unnameable, like those funny pictures of bone in which the bones appear to shine, which is only a trick of radium, that dangerous but beautiful element one would never put in soup. And the woman who plunged her hands into it until her skin peeled off, until she was possessed by a truly terrible weariness. She wanted to know the way love would immortize every butterfly, pin it to a sky of blue velvet, and will it to fly even into winter. Thank you. And the other one I'll read is actually kind of directly about the disability, since I spoke about it. It's also the first poem in the book, and I'm a little bit I think you'll get the theme. I was being kind of mordant in this book. I'm hoping I can find a cheerful one to read, Anna. That's my big prayer, to be cheerful or funny, which seems a little like doomed at the moment, but we will try. This poem is called Vivisection. How you bisected me, the elegance of the scars. The disease, it was not chemical. You could not cure it. I cling to this chill. Watch how I unfurl before it, flag of myself, a mirror distorted. This body, it is nothing. In an instant, I could transform it. Now it is a lake spreading outward. Now small and blank, a flat stone poised in a hand. It breaks apart, only the grains of it. Listen how they drift and scratch. The old forms, shapes, the forms that were broken are still here. They reassemble, a buzz, a communion. They promise me courage, other virtues, rough shield, freedom from pain. They tell me I am this or this, tube of calcium, star of blue phosphorus burning. Now the reenactment, chips fall from a chisel, joints burst into loud red flour. A bird flies out of my mouth and into the ceiling. Anna, let's see. I think I'll read a couple more poems. I'm going to now switch. Hello? Sorry. I'm now going to switch and read from this chapbook that's coming out, and it's called For the Loneliness of Walking Out. And it's sort of a book about longing. I got really invested in the whole idea of, looking at different forms of longing. It seemed like an interesting emotion. It's kind of unanswerable. It can be kind of there's all sorts of kind of longings we have. And it's a little bit like saudade in Brazilian, one of those untranslatable words, And I think emotionally, I'm kind of stuck in the 50s French, nostalgia, saudade kind of mode. But and also this book came out of a really interesting experience. I took a class, a wonderful online class with the poet Wen Hua. She's a really great teacher. Hua Wen, she's a really great teacher. And she gave us all these strange prompts. And one was to pick the most inappropriate kind of spirit guide you could come up with. She gave this as a prompt. And I picked Medea. So the whole book kind of spun out from that. I guess I've always kind of had like most of us, a love-hate relationship with Medea. So here's one of the Medea poems. And this isn't one of the ones I've usually read again. I was trying to read new stuff, but this one's called Mother Medea. I trained my children to be anti-capitalist, and now I work to support them. The worm in the apple, does it have to be a worm? I am trying to love my bones brittle, to love the mind without the inevitable trapdoor. What for so long I poured into lust or longing, now phantomake, pines in snow. My children don't like me enough. My husband gaslights out of habit or lack of imagination. I am drawing a door with ice blue chalk on the beige wall of the second bedroom. I am practicing the chords for Everybody Hurts, planting sunflowers so they grow fence high, to erase the difficult self, to take a name and refigure it into another's. Medea is the trap door in this poem. She burns with gorgeous indigo. Terror is the needle of her spine. Here's the worst you can do, she says, her rage like a green-black wave higher than my head, as she teaches me, clenched finger at a time, to dive down. And then I guess I'll read this poem, which I think is a little tenderer in nature. The book is kind of funny because it has a lot of Medea poems. And then I felt like, oh my gosh, if I make the whole book like this. So it has other poems. I didn't make the whole book of Medea poems, though I have many of them. She was kind of fun to write about. And this poem is actually, I'm very attached to this poem because it actually kind of came really out of something that happened in my life, which was a chance meeting with another woman in my day job. And, you know, like most of us, I mean, even if you work in the arts or something, you know, your day job is often a lot of kind of selling of things one way or the other. And I was working temporarily for a nonprofit. And this poem kind of came out of that. And it's called The Earth. What can I tell her over breakfast when she says her son suffers from madness? And because there is no mental health, he has ended up in jail. And she is relieved because at least he might be safe there, or he might get to see the doctor. We are eating egg white omelets. We are counting carbs. We are buttoning ourselves in our clean dresses and high-heeled shoes in order to bring home the bacon, doing what we need to do, and it is what it is. Her granddaughter and daughter are living with her in the one bedroom. Nights, the daughter lounges by the pool looking at her phone while she teaches the child to plant seeds in a flower bed she feels bad she does not own. She tells me she cried in the car coming here. She did not know me then. She thought we would be talking to each other the whole time about what we are selling, what the other might buy. But somehow we left that behind over the toast with the cunning little pots of strawberry jam. Who can explain all this luxury, all this despair? Or how we hold our secret shames so close and gloss our lips with cinnamon fire as if that were some legitimate form of protection. Cinnamon fire. She just turned 50. I tell her, wait 10 years. You won't know more, but you will get closer to forgiving because it is all happening on a wheel that spins so fast. Why not stop and look at the pink flowers you planted with your granddaughter? Why not dig your bare toes in the good wet earth? We play with the crusts on our plates. The waitress takes the coffee away. We are strangers again, each carrying our lonely fear. Our children won't find their way, wishing for them some inner logic, sacred trust of self and earth, which exists for each of us so far within, so far under the skin, we can't even begin to say what it is made of. It merely is, poised between love and grief, the blue space we call wonder, which is nearly the dew on the grass, shadow the sun makes as it rolls over the vast skin of the earth. And then I guess I'll end with this poem, which is probably the closest I might have to a happy poem for today. And I have this amaryllis at my home in San Antonio. As you can see, I'm kind of living the student life with the commute. I have this incredibly and I'm actually enjoying it, bare and minimalist and kind of Target furnished place here. And then I have this big clumsy house in San Antonio that I can't seem to pack up. But at the house in San Antonio, I have this amaryllis. And if anyone's ever had one, they're like the most incredible plants because they die away and you can kind of, I don't know, this amaryllis has ended up in the closet. It's ended up in the, just looking like it's never going to resurrect. And, somehow it always does. And the flowers, when they come, are so extraordinary. So I feel like George O'Keeffe, who said I got 6 paintings out of that star. I must have gotten 6 poems out of this wonderful amaryllis of mine, and this is one of them. I'm thinking, why? Why do you pick yourself up? The long leaf split down the middle, browning and ugly. What is left of copal, sepal, seed? But yours remains swollen, no matter what. I have pushed you into my mudroom, my hall closet of rubber boots, left you on my splintered deck through ice and rain so hard, one might swear the air itself was converting. I have spilled your earth, picked at your 2 leaves with nervous fingers, left my own holes, my newly crafted scars all over your greenish body. Yet each year, right around this time, I watch you begin again. What will it help if I tell you how your blossoms break me, so red and wide and filled with gold? Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.
That was beautiful, Sheila. Someone wrote in the comments that that listening to you read was making them want to write poetry. And I really feel that too. I was really having a lot of free associating, and it's very opening of the imagination and beautiful. Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Yeah. So let me just get his book cover up here. Okay, got it. I will screen share it in a moment. It is my great pleasure to introduce Joe Zaccardi. And I'll just say my history with Joe Zaccardi, I mean, I discovered his work about 10 years ago. Joe and I were in a literary magazine. I'm sure he regrets this because it's like no good deed goes unpunished. But we were in a magazine together, and he wrote me and said he liked my poem. And then, of course, when my next book came out, I asked him if he would blurb it, which is really like you always go, damn, I knew I should have kept my mouth shut. But I just really love his work. When he had just published A Wolf Stands Alone in Water, which Yvonne Postel describes in her introduction as being about, quote, damage and repair. And that phrase really stuck with me. I think that theme of damage and repair carries through to The Weight of Bodily Touches, which was his next book, which came out in 2019, and in his most beautiful recent collection, Songbirds of the Nine Rivers. And let me just, hold on, I'm going to screen share. Screen share. There we go. Wait, there we go. Okay. In this latest collection, Joseph Zaccardi taps into the life-changing experience of having been an 18-year-old medic in the Vietnam War and finding a collection of Chinese and Vietnamese poetry in the library of a US Navy ship in 1966. I mean, is that not the opening of an epic movie? You know, that is just cinematic, moving, and very tender. One reviewer writes that even in their most somber reflections, an underlying beauty suffuses these poems, which is true. In a jacket blurb, G10 writes of Songbirds of the Nine Rivers, every note is fresh and alive. Mei Sato from the Yokohama College of Art and Design says of the poetry of Joseph Zaccardi, he lets us feel what he feels, lets us touch what he touches. His voice is song, his sounds are prayers. They wash over me the way the sea washes over the sound of itself. Observations of the natural world and emotional honesty. And I just want to stress the emotional honesty part because that's what kind of just really grabbed me about his work when I first started reading it, are what attracts me personally to the poetry of Joseph Zaccardi. I looked back through earlier books of his and saw that I had marked this poem, Sacrifice, where those two things blend perfectly in one image. And I returned to this poem, and it returns to me sometimes because I think it makes struggle beautiful. And I think if you can come to a point in your life where you can see struggle as something beautiful, you've made a huge step forward in your evolution as a human being. And this is what he writes: when cranes mate, they mate for life. When one dies, the other flies over the open sea until it can fly no more. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and give a warm welcome to Joseph Zaccardi. Joe, can you unmute yourself?
I
You-
don't actually see him on screen.
Uh-oh, he was here. He had a problem getting on. That's why I hopped off for a while. Let me check my phone. Oh, let's see, I have a text. No, that's not him. Okay. Let me see if he sent me a Gmail. Okay, I don't see anything in my email or a text. We did have him on. Let me just check again. He's not, I don't see him. Okay. So he's probably trying to reach, I mean, I would have to be, if I was a featured reader at a reading and I couldn't get on, I would have to be hospitalized. I mean, I would be like, I would be so freaked out. So if you guys agree, I think what I should do is just, I was going to introduce Jason. Jason is
Okay.
after Joe. Let's
Yeah,
just
that's-
go ahead
yeah,
and have
yeah,
Jason,
that
and then
would be good.
we'll give Joe a little time. So, okay. I think I met Jason Schneiderman about 15 years ago. Martin Mitchell introduced us. Hold on, let me just, okay. Can you guys hear me? Because when I go to speaker view, it's still on.
Mhm.
Not that I mind looking at your lovely, hey, Bill Moore, you have a beard. Hello, my friend. Looking good. Okay. All right. I don't know why it's not showing. Okay. I think I met Jason about 15 years ago. Martin Mitchell introduced us. I don't know, maybe Jason remembers. And what I personally appreciate about Jason's poetry is that it kind of wakes you up with its humor. And I'll say as a caveat, he's very funny. But the last time I heard you read a poem, Jason, it was in the Cormorant series. You read, I don't remember why you were reading, if it was an open mic. It was, you weren't maybe you were the feature reader. I don't know. But anyway, you read a poem, you got kind of choked up, and like everyone in the audience was choked up. So he can kind of span that emotional distance in his poetry, and that makes it really kind of exciting to read. Other
Joseph
writers-
is back. Do we want to?
Oh, Joe's back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Are you okay, Joe? You okay?
Oh, yeah. That's
You got, okay.
some magic in the air took me out.
Okay. Can you maybe turn your video on? Are you okay with that? Do you know how to do that?
Let's see. There's
down at the
start-
bottom.
Start video.
Where it says stop video, and if you click that, and it should say, there you are. Whoops. You
Am I
went away.
there?
No. Want to try again?
Still. That's you. That's
Okay. Click your video. Click the
yeah. So it says start video, right?
well, it's at the bottom of your Zoom screen, it'll say
Right.
stop video, and it'll have an X through it, and you need to just click on that to make the line through it go away. And there
Got
you
it.
go.
There we are. Thank you.
All right, well then I introduced you. You might have missed it. It was a powerful introduction. So why don't you just go ahead?
Oh, okay. So I'll try to read something I haven't read before. Let's see. Okay. This poem is called The Water Clock. On the Leahy River, the men fish from bamboo rafts. They use trained cormorants to make their catch. They carry their heavy wickerwork reels along the stone cold path to market. I pull myself across the water on a cable boat. Mango birds and moss along the limestone hills, lotuses rooted in mud blooming above water, green orchards of unripened oranges. I write my poems in the currents and wild grasses. I close my eyes to the blue mountains, breathe in the perfumed silk drying on the sandbar. When the cold river freezes over, fish nibble at shadows. The longer I look at the mountain, the less clear the mountain becomes. Let's see. Just one more. Here's a good one, I think. There is a sword in every song. After a long war and a hard-fought victory, there was much to be done and redone. And so it was decreed the steep rock cliffs above the river way be cut and hewed to bring forth a new city, to bring forth order from the unordered. The women of that time chiseled the white granite, and their whitened faces were rilled by their tears. They sang the praises of the 8th great grandson of the Yellow Emperor, a musing and mourning sound, and how, before his forced suicide, the emperor studied the uneven tail feathers of a caged swallow and listened to the sing-song of the oriole.
Joe, excuse me for interrupting you. Your book cover is kind of blocking your face. So
Oh,
if
I'm sorry.
you just,
Is that better?
yeah, maybe tilt your camera down or you're good. You're good. Okay.
Try that.
Okay.
Shall I continue or?
Yeah, keep going. It's good. Doing great.
Okay. Moving along here.
You,
Let's see. I don't know. Here's one. Mother of Pearl. There was a jeweler from the state of Chu who had ordered to sell a beautiful strand of pearls made a box from the fine grained wood of magnolia, decorated with rose-colored gems. Its borders were lined with green jadeite, and the interior scented the perfume of osmanthus blossoms. The craftsmanship was so exquisite that a mandarin who held the box in his hands overlooked the pearls. I always think of the Jersey Shore. You buy all these gaudy things and you overlook the pearls, things you should be buying or worth a bit more or something. Let's see. The Making of a Poem by Confucius. The mother draws a chessboard on brown paper. Her daughter fashions fish hooks out of old needles, and a mouse patters along the skirting board, and a spinner sits before her silk spools. Last chance peddlers cry out their wares. The streams wind and the wind sings. Crows and sparrows return to their nest. Kestrels fasten onto their prey, and dragon kites drift downward, while white birds fade into the hills. Waking in his bed half filled with light, Confucius said, each poem starts as an iron bar hammered on an anvil into wire, and left the rest in a square inch of land. And the phrase "a square inch of land" is very important in Chinese culture, and it really means the essence of something. Like if you took the essence of China, the whole country, and put in a square inch of land, that's what you're talking about. So just a little footnote there. And let's see. Okay, I'll do one more, okay. Leahy unfurls a scroll of rice paper. I listen to a boatman's oar song creak and stroke and touch. I watch a tiger doze in a hammock swagged between two ginkgos. I see green birds feed among green rushes of the middle reaches, and fishermen using trained cormorants to make their catch. Behind the trees, music rises from the weave and beat and thrum of bees, and the rush flowers along the bank retreat and surge. Mimosa blossoms fold at midnight, and dragon kites drift downward. A few hours pass, and the night's rattle increases. A woman plucks the vermilion strings of a guzan. What one gathers and scatters is windblown. This is why peach blossoms are always falling. This is why there's a sword in every song. The gods drive their horses through the clouds. I scroll characters on sand and rock. My mind is full of river travel. My head is full of crows. That's a little history there. The last line, my head is full of crows. I was on a walk with my dog. It was fall, and all the leaves on this giant oak had fallen off. And in its place were all these crows making this racket. So you can imagine this great crown of this tree with all these crows talking all at the same time. You know, and because I'm stupid, I write on my arm, my head is full of crows, because I know by the time I get home, I'll forget that. So the last line was the beginning of the poem to think of. I don't know if that has had, if you've had that experience, you probably have, or something similar. So anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joe. That was wonderful. I'm sorry we had some technical challenges, that you stayed very calm throughout. Thank you very
It's really
much.
my fault. It's my fault. It really is.
Well, you know, let's just blame the gods of technology, you know. So thank you very much. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Jason Schneiderman. I had started introducing him. Let me just back up. Jason, I think Martin Mitchell introduced us. I'm not sure if you remember, or yeah. You want to unmute yourself.
Back in the Ratapalix days.
Yes.
A long time ago.
Yes.
Alex.
Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you some of the words that writers have, and thank you. Okay. I'm a little thrown. All right. So let me tell you some of the words writers have used describing the poetry of Jason Schneiderman. And I think it kind of describes his personality as well. Maybe even his wardrobe. No, just kidding. Exuberant, sparkling, sardonic, sincere, rife with a dark and gorgeous intelligence, quirky, and always, as Matthew Olsman says in his jacket blurb for Self-Portrait of Icarus as a Country on Fire, always reaching toward love, which I think is beautiful. And I think the poems do always reach toward love. And let me just do a screen share real quick so you can see the cover of the latest book that I'm referring to now. Okay. All right, so feast your eyes on that while I keep talking.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, isn't it nice? In primary source, for which Jason Schneiderman won the Benjamin Saltman Award from Red Hen Press, he writes, "You're the top, you're no-tell motel. You're the top, you're Marie House hair gel." I mean, I think that is like the funniest. I would kill to be referred to in one of Jason Schneiderman's poems. So I give you permission, Jason. And he means it affectionately. And that's another characterization of that humor. It's never mean, you know, it's never mean. In Hold Me Tight, which came out in 2020 from Red Hen Press, Jason Schneiderman shows off a snappy, satisfying, and often dark wit. For example, this is from the poem Americana, quote, "You're all hat and no cattle, you're all snake and no venom," and it ends, "You're all ruler and no measure." In Jason's latest book, Self-Portrait of Icarus as a Country on Fire, the poems are longer and the pace is in it for the long haul. In the poem Gay Divorce, 10th Avenue, he writes, "The truth is that New York is a teacher with only one lesson, how to be sad, how to live with sadness." And if you compare that, you know, really to some of the comments in the earlier work, you get a real sense of how someone evolves over time. And the book in its entirety earns that statement in ways I think you will be very moved to hear. Please welcome Jason Schneiderman. Let me just stop.
Oh my God, thank you. So, can everyone hear me okay? I had to put in headphones because there's a slightly raucous birthday party going on downstairs. So I just want to make sure that everyone...
He's at the Pines.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you. I'm in the pines. Thank you, Susanna and Lynn and Carolyn and Sandy. This is amazing. I really appreciate being here. And thank you, Sheila and Anna and Joseph for reading with me, for me reading with you. And Sheila, this has a reference to Medea, so we'll start here. Self-portrait of Icarus as a country on fire. Can we talk about the wax? The way the wax would have felt on his skin, slick at the first signs of melting, a spreading warmth that felt so good he flew closer to the sun. The sensation of full-bodied coating of intoxicating heat before the wax began to burn, to cover him like napalm, to coat his body in something like jet fuel and feathers, consuming him as surely as the coat Medea prepared for Jason's bride. I think my mother named me Jason because she wanted me to live past the tragedies she knew would be my lot, to keep going after the bodies had piled up on stage, but I've always felt like Icarus, a flaming ball of wax and feather, not a beautiful boy falling out of the sky, but a charred corpse, plummeting to the ocean. I took the name Icarus when I felt the wax begin to melt on my skin. I'm not falling from the sky just yet. The burn is still a spreading warmth.
Mm.
And I'm gonna, the poems are very long in this book, and I take great inspiration from Kafka. And one of the things that people often don't know about Kafka is that during his life, he was considered hysterically funny. That when he gave the first readings for the Metamorphosis, like people fell out of their chairs laughing. And so I strongly believe that humor kind of gets a bad rap in our culture. And if you look at psychoanalytic understandings of humor, what humor does is it adjusts things, that it gives you a new understanding, that it kind of like, it sort of like changes the focus on your lens. And so I don't think we sort of give humor enough credit for its transformative power. And so anyway, but this poem is actually inspired by Szymborska. And for years I tried to work on this poem. And I think I finally, hopefully Szymborska is pleased with the result. Stardust. Okay, fine. So we're all made of stars. But being made of stars is like being descended from Noah or Adam. It's no big deal if you truly believe it. And what good is it to me that our sweat is made of stardust? That the unsanitary hand dryers at my school are made of stardust in the stardust bathrooms that the nursing department can't use? Because it turns out the star dryers are just blowing the star feces on our star hands all over the place. What good is it to me that the train to work is a star train, or that my job is a star job, or that the star human star body contains 9 to 11 star pints of star blood? When I was star 7, I was star woken, star gently in the early morning because my star mother was losing her star blood. She collected the star blood in star cartons, which held the milk, the star milk I had drank on my star cereal to make measurement of the blood for the star doctors at the star hospital where she and my star father went to complete the miscarriage of her star fetus. When I went to the house of her star friend, quietly, sleepily, I didn't even miss a star day of star school. Oh, stars. Will you listen when I tell you that I remember this? Stars, it happened 5 times because my star mother wanted more star life. She wanted to be a mother more times than she succeeded, and she only stopped so she wouldn't die, which was a relief because I wanted her not to die. And I think it made my mother sad that I didn't want to make more lives as much as she had. And I think that's what she meant when she made me promise over and over again that I wouldn't ever hurt myself, even though I had never shown any inclination towards self-harm or suicide. And yet she brought it up over and over as though she knew something I didn't about myself. And even though I thought I knew something about her and her blood and the empty milk cartons we kept on hand for the next time she had to keep track of the blood she was losing, maybe I was wrong. 30 years later, when all those fears of her bleeding to death seemed trapped in some amber of memory, she died because her star lungs were too wet to carry the star oxygen to her star blood. I'm so sorry, Star Mother. I'm so sorry, Star Corpse. Be at peace for now in the star ground as I carry forward this star life. So star wasted on star me, the life you star wanted to make so star badly. This star life you star wanted enough to risk death for. And here I am with no star children of my own, waiting to star crawl into the star earth saying, I'm sorry, so sorry. Thank you for this life, Star Mother, so sorry. So sorry, I just don't want it, so sorry, so sorry. I just want it to be over, so sorry. And I'm gonna read just as Lynn mentioned, the poems have gotten really long. So I'm gonna read a longish poem about Frida Kahlo. Stalinism 4. There are a number of sequences that move across the books, and there's a Stalinism sequence, and this is Stalinism for Frida Kahlo. In her very last painting, Frida Kahlo painted Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin had assassinated her lover, Leon Trotsky, a Jew, or rather, in English, Jew. Trotsky would have said Yevray, the ethnicity, not the religion. If you can parse the two, I can't. I could until I lived in Russia and was Yevray myself, the people around me seeing it in my face. Try explaining in halting Russian that you can't look Jewish to people who think you look Ivreysky and are right, and aren't asking because they don't like you, but because they think you're one of them. Try to tell them about Whoopi Goldberg and Scarlett Johansson and Peggy Lipton and Rashida Jones. The Hebrew word for Hebrew is Ivrit, cousin of Ivrei, cousin of Hebrew. Lev Bronstein, like my grandmother, was born in the Pale of Settlement, an area created in 1791 by Catherine the Great to contain the Jewish population of her recently conquered lands. Lev Bronstein became Leon Trotsky because it was the name in the false passport he used to escape Tsarist Russia. The name stuck. Yosef Yugashvili, who took the name Joseph Stalin, Stalin meaning man of steel, would refer to Trotsky as Bronstein as a kind of slur, mirrored in English where Jew has the odd distinction of being the only name for a group of people that is the proper name and an offensive term at the same time. Stalin hated Jews. He purged Jews from the upper ranks of Soviet society. He had 13 of the Soviet Union's most prominent Yiddish language writers murdered in a single night. My grandmother called Yiddish Jewish because Yid is the Yiddish word for Jew. Diego Rivera considered himself Jewish, as he was descended from conversos, Jews who had decided to convert to avoid the Inquisition, and while Frida Kahlo's father was not actually Jewish, she seems to have believed he was, and despite Judaism being matrilineal, she spoke of herself as Jewish. When Rivera and Kahlo checked into a restricted hotel in Detroit, she declared herself Jewish. And as they were guests of Henry Ford, the hotel changed their policy to admit Jews. The irony here being that Henry Ford hated Jews, going as far as to publish books like The International Jew, the world's foremost problem. Ford even received the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest award that Nazi Germany bestowed on foreigners. It doesn't surprise me that Kahlo said she was Jewish when she was not. It doesn't surprise me that Kahlo took Trotsky to her bed and then painted his executioner. During the Second World War, when the generals of the Red Army asked Stalin to outlaw rape, he encouraged it instead, and outlawed being captured as a prisoner of war. In 1945, at the behest of the Soviet ambassador to Mexico, Frida Kahlo sent a large-scale work more than 6 feet wide to the Soviet Union as a gift of friendship, La Mesa Herida, or the Wounded Table. The ambassador died in a plane crash shortly after. By the time the work arrived in the Soviet Union, the work was declared decadent and imperialist. Surrealism had become an affront to Soviet ideology, and Kahlo's work was seen as surrealist. Kahlo had begun The Wounded Table while divorcing Diego Rivera over his affair with her sister Cristina, though the rift was short-lived, and Rivera and Kahlo remarried within a year. A committed Marxist, Kahlo found Rivera's difficult relationship with organized communism to be quite painful. Rivera was expelled from the Soviet Union in 1927 and resigned or was expelled from the Mexican Communist Party many times. Hosting Trotsky had made them suspect, and her late painting of Stalin may have been a way to make clear her devotion to communism. What did Kahlo know when she painted Stalin? Did she know of the doctor's plot, of the murdered poets, of the terrors, of the starved kolkhozes, of the show trials, of sanctioned rape, of the 13-year-old orphan Stalin impregnated in his 30s? On my desk is a little box with a decoupage self-portrait of Frida Kahlo, a gift from my best friend with whom I studied Kahlo's work in college. And if I were a different sort of person, I'd take it off my desk in protest. But I love my friend. I love Kahlo's face. While I'm lost in thought, looking at this little box, a student asks me, shaking me from my train of thought, whatever happened to Guns N' Roses? And I tell her that if I recall correctly, they recorded a Charles Manson song without telling their record label, and even though we didn't call it that then, they were canceled. I think there's more, but Wikipedia confirms the basic outlines of the story. My student asks, why are people attracted to evil? Which is a stunningly good question. And I respond, surprising myself, because it's freeing. We talk about Eldridge Cleaver and Bill Cosby, about the Marquis de Sade, Caligula, Roy Cohn. We talk about Frida Kahlo painting Stalin.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Anna. And see what I said at the beginning? A constellation, right? A unique constellation in the sky that will actually never be recreated in all likelihood. And so I invite all of you here, because I know you're all word people. I invite and dare you to name this constellation that we have experienced here tonight. Before we move to the open mic, how about we just unmute and show our appreciation for our featured readers tonight? Yeah.
That was
Thank you.
fantastic.
Oh,
Thank you.
wow.
It was really good.
Great hosts.
Beautiful. Yeah, and featured readers, definitely, when you have time, take a look in the chat and see what they're very generous. So I will turn it over to the open mic. Thank you, one and all.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. That was really, really, wow, amazing reading. I think we just have two, unless I missed someone in the chat. Mick Cortez and Melissa Adelia Calanzas. Was there anyone else who wanted to read in the open mic? Okay, let's start with Mick Cortez, who is in San Francisco. Am I right, Mick?
You are right across the bay, Oakland.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And I'm so glad that you're reading the open mic, because Mick has been a regular of our series, and I've always tried to get her to read in the open mic. So, okay.
Okay. Well, before I start, I just want to say I had a few instances of freeze frame. I don't know if anybody else had it, and I hope it doesn't happen while I'm reading, but just to let you know ahead of time. Okay, this is called Bomb Drill. The teacher made a game of it, so not to have scared and crying children in her charge. Make yourselves little and let's see who can be the most quiet, she instructed. We crouched on the floor, our tiny hands clutching the table legs. Scattered giggling denied the quiescence, but a look into her worried face, and I overheard her private thought. A desk cannot save us from a bomb. I would learn the drill was not about protecting us. It was a conditioning exercise to instill fear and conformity, to ensure our approval when they would tell us years later that in order to bring peace, they had to drop the bomb on Japanese civilians, that in order to save the historic victims, they had to destroy Palestine. These words are not meant to alarm, but rather to prepare for the struggle ahead. The imperial powers lie to us at every turn, not because they think they will believe that we will believe them, but to fix it so that we don't trust anyone, not even ourselves, to find a way to a collective human consciousness that can shatter the deceptions, clearing the way for powerful, productive forces to prevail. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Mick. I never thought of it that way, that it's really an exercise in conformity, but you're right, a desk can't save children from a bomb. Okay.
No.
So we have two more, Victoria Larkin. Sure, Victoria, you can read after Melissa. Melissa, Adelia, Calazas, thank you. Please read your poem for the open mic.
And Thomas has also asked if he could read a short one.
Sure. Okay, so up now is Melissa, then Victoria, then Thomas. Melissa, are you there? Do you need to unmute yourself? Where's Melissa? There she is.
Yeah, I see her.
Melissa, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry, there's cats involved here. Sorry. And I had to turn things off because it's really loud in here. So the fan. So anyway, here we go. Sorry. It's like people are yelling at me and I'm trying to do this. So now I just lost the screen. You can go ahead and do somebody else because I just turned off the fan and everything went blank. So go to the next person. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So one poem, 1 page in length, and that makes it more suspenseful, I think. But anyway, Thomas, sir, read your poem, please, for our open mic. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thomas here in Olympia, Washington, and I have a poem that's not in my new book, my Moon Path book. This is after Aaron Abeta, who I heard reading a poem that he wrote in response to his wife asking how much and how long he had loved her. So while hearing the poet Aaron Abeta reading love poems wherein he answers questions asked by his wife about the length and breadth and depth of his love for her, who could I think of but my own beloved? There was that moment, that distant blue that shone through centuries and more, blue even older in your eyes, reflected millennia ago, off the Euphrates, the Blue Nile, the whole Pacific Ocean, when I knew I had loved you before there were Octobers and Augusts, before monuments made to the moon and stars, which were ours even before calendars were marked on stones or bones, those thousands of years before anyone had left Africa for Asia, before anyone knew the blue of the Aegean Sea and its blueness and stars were etched on stone and painted on walls. I loved you sacred before temple, synagogue, or church, when love was blue water in a green cathedral under a new blue sky, and the water fell from cliffstone into sun-sparkled air, became the dazzled light of water falling, as I am still so dazzled, as earth draws me falling incandescent for you now, as through all those centuries, now as then, as always, I love you as the blue water bends to touch the shore, as we touched our shores under moons and stars, as we loved again and again, all this time since touch began.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I hope you'll share that with the person. So let's hear Melissa, Adelia Calanzas, and then Victoria Larkin. So Melissa, are you ready?
Can you hear me now?
You okay? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When I forgot. I existed when I forgot me. For those who did not notice, I disappeared. For those who did not notice, till they needed me. For those who were looking, they found me. For those who found me but did not recognize me. For those who did not recognize me, always needed something from me. For those who needed something from me and gave nothing, keep walking, keep scrolling, keep working your workflow. For those who found me and did not recognize me, yet recognized there was something missing that was beyond my doing, I am so thankful for me and salt, sand, sea, me, for me, reminders how I breathe. Repetition, repetition, repetition for me to see, me for me to remember who I am, who I've been, how I see me as I am, as I was, where I move my body. To slow my mind so I can see how far I've come. This is not vanity. This is appreciation for age. I want to remember me. I have earned the word old. I will never feel shame for aged. Do not call me young unless comparing me to a sentinel tree. Do not argue my age. I do not find that flattering. On this day, that day, I stood on my 2 feet while the sun found my face. I feared its rays for 8 years since my DNA caused my cells to attack parts of me. That chapter closed once that anomaly was excised from me, always knowing it's not if, it is when it will return. No longer fearing the inevitable, sometimes wishing for its speedy arrival. I held the phone to my face, found my light with puffy eyes from that morning's cry, and hoped to capture how the birds see me. Without judgment, just a nod to a passerby. Once again, happy with how I see me as I am. No smoke, no mirrors, no makeup, no shower. This process, a reflection, a prescription for clarity, sanity, celebrating the will to continue creating moments, reasons for existing as me, for me, reminders how I breathe. Water, walking, breathing, thinking, gently cleansing me. Face same, new day, same place, high tide, slow pace, salt, sand, see me, breathing ablutions, this stretch of sand. I love these miles, each step I see. I feel this light supports me. I see me.
Okay. That was really fun. That was really an interesting poem. Thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa. So our last open mic reader is Victoria Larkin.
Hey everyone.
I'm sorry, Melissa, where are you? Are you in California?
I'm in Anaheim, California with no air conditioning either. It's 101 in my house right now. So it's like,
okay, I thought so. Okay, so I'm sorry to have interrupted you, Victoria. Please hear Victoria Larkin for our open mic.
I'm coming to you from New York City. It is actually nice and cool here right now, but anyway, this is a little short thing that kind of was a voice that came through me, and it's actually called Beloved, but it's not Thomas's Beloved. there was a line in a thing, so I'm just going to read from there. The line was, in the 1600s, a Cossack pirate named Stenka Razin offered his beloved Persian princess to the Volga River as a human sacrifice. Beloved, what am I to you but another portal to immortality? My womb for your fame, when any other would do as much for your longevity. What is my heart to your name in the books of men? Who am I? I squirmed under your love, ranting at me in your foreign tongue, your self-satisfaction glistening on my skin, stink arising. Ah, they tell me I was your beloved, who you drowned, to prove your manhood, to win the loyalty of your men. 'Twas only my soul you set free from such earthly torments. I welcomed those icy waters as they caressed themselves around me and drew me with such longing into their heart.
Okay. That was beautiful. Thank you, Victoria. And so I want to thank our open mic readers, Mick Cortez, Melissa Adelia Calanzas, Victoria Larkin, and Thomas. And I really want to thank also our wonderful, generous featured readers, Sheila Black, Anna Leahy, Jason Schneiderman, and Joseph Zaccardi. Thank you so much for your generous time, for your beautiful work. Let's all unmute ourselves and just go crazy.
Lavish, lavish.
She was all
Thank you so
brilliant,
much. I'm going
brilliant,
to
brilliant.
stop the recording now. It'll take me a moment to figure out. Oh, that was easy.